Welcome to the Conscious Core podcast, and today I have a very special guest for you people. And if you are the one, if you are thinking that I want to invest in money or I want some kind of funding in my life, because right now I have no work, I am out of work, I have work but it's not sufficient for my family, because we all have realized that you need to have 5 to 6 sources of income post pandemic. So if you are one of them, and if you feel that you can do a lot more than this and invest some time of yours, maybe in a weekend, and so this podcast is for you. Go for it, listen to it, how to fund a startup, how to do things, what should be the pitch for investing, what is that problem that you need to solve in the society to get proper funding for your business plan. So this one's for you. Get hold on it, get hooked. We are going to be there right now, and by this time you might have guessed who the person is today whom I'm interviewing. He's none other than Mr. Dhruv Nath. He is the co-author of the book Funding Your Startup. Thank you all of you, and a very warm welcome to Dhruv ji, and he's also the director of Lead Angels Network. Earlier, he was working as a professor in a university in Gurgaon, and he's been a lot of, he's carried a lot of portfolios with him. He's seen the education side of it. He's seen the investment side of it. He's been an author also. So I think you are going to have a lot more today. So get hooked. And I welcome Dhruv ji to the thing today.
Thank you.
How are you, sir?
Thanks, Kriti. Oh, perfect. Enjoying the lockdown.
We all are doing the same, though in different
We have no
ways.
choice. We have no choice.
Right. So before we begin, I just wanted to ask you about yourself. I mean, how this thing about writing a book happened, and how did you get into the investment side? What actually triggered you, or maybe what was the what was that feeling? Okay, this is what I wanted to, because our podcast is basically about uncovering your real self. So how did this happen?
Okay. Thanks, Kriti. And good to be with all of you youngsters. Even if you're 60-year-old, you're probably a youngster for me. So, just to give you a little background, I have spent about 20 years in the IT industry and about 19 years at MDI Gurgaon as a professor. And what happened was, I had a lot of students, and these were all MBA students, and these people would come to me, look, sir, we have this startup. Can you please advise us? Can you help us? Can you mentor us? I said, sure. So we used to sit in the open air canteen in Gurgaon in the MDI campus, and it was such fun. I used to sit with these guys. I would advise them. We would work out strategies and how to market and so on. So that is how I actually got involved in startups. Then these
Okay.
youngsters asked me, they said, by the way, can I also speak in Hindi a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah?
आप पूरा
Okay.
Hindi English, yeah,
नहीं
it's
नहीं it'll be a
English.
combination. So these
Yeah.
youngsters asked me, sir, अपनी advice तो दे दिया, पैसा भी दे दो, because we need funding. So that is how I actually became an angel investor, starting with my
Okay.
students. And this was about
Okay.
8 or 9 years ago. And since then, I have been spending a lot of time mentoring youngsters, startups, founders of startups, and also investing in them. So I must have invested, I think, in about 12 so far. And I've probably mentored
Okay.
maybe 80, 90, maybe a little more than that. Okay. Now, what has
Right.
happened is that there is a lot of learning which I've had in the last 8, 9 years. And I have seen a lot of startups which have been successful, and I've also seen a lot of startups which have been failures, right? And what I realized was, look, I am advising each person in a one-on-one meeting, right? Whether it is in
Right.
the MDI canteen or in CCD or wherever. But if I can collect all the know-how that I've picked up after mentoring all these people, and I put it in the form of a book, suddenly everybody has access to this. So they don't have to
Right.
physically meet me because that's not always possible, right? So essentially, all my learning, and I have a co-author who also has been in the field of startups for the last 20 years. So we put together all our learning over the past 10, 20 years. All that has gone into a book, which basically helps any founder or potential founder of a startup to create a startup, to hopefully create a successful startup, and potentially to get funding for that startup. So that's how the book was born.
Right. So the book is Funding Your Startup and Other Nightmares. Now I
Correct.
have a question for you, and I have a question that how is this book different from other books?
Okay, good question. And I can go on and on about this for the next 2 hours, but I'll try and be short.
Sure.
See, there are several books in the market on startups. Okay, so let me start narrowing down.
Right.
Unfortunately, most of these books have been written by authors in the US, which means they talk about American startups, right? So they will talk about
They are not applicable in
Amazon.
India.
Absolutely. They will talk
Right.
about Amazon, they'll talk about Google, they will talk about Airbnb, and so on and so forth, right? The environment in India is very, very different. It's entirely different, right? Funding is completely different, infrastructure is completely different, requirements are completely different, and therefore, while it is useful to learn those things, you actually need a book which talks about Indian startups if you're creating a startup in India, right? So that's number one.
Right.
Now, having come to this, you have a few books, not too many, a few books which talk about Indian startups, but almost all of them, without exception, talk about the big, huge success stories. You know, people like they will talk about Flipkart, or they will talk about Oyo Rooms, or they will talk about
Paytm.
yeah, Paytm
Paytm.
or Naukri. You know? Now, these are startups which have been around for many many years. Number one, number two, they are not startups anymore. They are huge companies. They are like Hindustan Lever. They are like ITC. So the point is, if you have a young founder or even a non-young founder who wants to create a startup or who's struggling in the first 1 year, 2 years, पैसा नहीं बन रहा है, revenue नहीं आ रहा है, funding नहीं मिल रही है, what can he learn from the Paytms or let's say the Flipkarts who've been around and who are now giants? He can't. He can't even identify with those guys because those guys faced similar problems 20 years ago. What he wants to
Right.
read about is guys who are in the same boat as him, right? So
Right.
smaller guys who are still small, who are still have struggling, who are still facing the same problems, right? So what we decided was
Right.
we will talk largely about the smaller guys, right? And that is absolutely unique. Nobody talks about them. Nobody knows what's happening to these guys. But in
Right.
addition, we also have some good solid gyan from the big successful guys. You know, people like the founder of Naukri, the founder of Make My Trip, the founder of Policy Bazaar. We also have that. So
Deep
it's a
Kalra.
combination of
Right.
correct Deep Kalra. So it's a combination of the small guys and gyan from the big guys, right? So this makes it
Right.
absolutely unique. However, there
Yeah.
are two more things which make it even more unique. Number one, when you read stories about startups, and you can read these in many of these online media,
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, for example, or Your Story, or you have TV channels like you've got this on CNBC. You have this Young Turks, right? Now,
Yes.
all of them talk about success stories, right? I'll give you a parallel. If you want to
Right.
learn If you want to enter Bollywood, it's a great idea to go and learn from Shah Rukh Khan or Amitabh Bachchan,
Right.
the real success stories. But it's probably far more important to learn from the guy who came from the fields of Punjab, tried it out, did not succeed, said, boss, ye mere se nahi hoga, and went back to his fields in Punjab. Right? So
Right.
it is probably even more important to learn from other people's failures than it is to learn
Right.
from their successes. And
Right.
nobody talks
It.
about failures. किसी को आप
Right.
दारू भी पिला दो, you treat him to, you make him absolutely drunk, वो फिर भी नहीं बोलेगा failure के बारे में. Our book talks about
Right.
failures, right? So it talks about
Right.
both successes and failure, and that's completely unique. And I think finally, what we have done is we have created something called a framework. and I call it the
Uh-huh.
persistent framework, PERSISTENT, the English word persistent, which helps you to figure out whether your startup is likely to be successful or likely to be a failure. And I think
Right.
that's again unique because any founder or potential founder can evaluate his startup using the
Right.
persistent framework and therefore figure out what changes he needs to make. So it's actually a very, very
Yes.
unique book because of all these reasons.
Yes. Right.
And
And
by
I
the way,
also found it
sorry,
like,
yeah,
yes.
I think it has gone into the third reprint now. It just got launched about 7, 8 months back. It's gone into the third
Right.
reprint, and fortunately, people are liking it and finding it useful. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I think it's very important to get a true perspective. I think failures is as important as your
Oh,
success because that is the
correct.
journey that you're having. And in that
Absolutely
journey, if you learn from the guy who's had a lot of failures, there would
correct.
be a great learning rather than from learning from a successful guy
Absolutely.
who's
So
not
you
have
learn
much
from both.
failures.
Correct. You learn from both, but nobody talks about failures, which is why you find
Right.
it very difficult to learn from them. Unless you got a close friend who gets drunk in your presence and he says, "Boss, मैं तेरे को सारी failure कहानी बता देता हूँ." But
सब
that's
बता
very
देता
rare. That's
हूँ.
very rare, na? So we have talked about
Right.
multiple failures.
I read the book and it was very nice, that persistent framework. What will be
Ah,
your problem? What will be your pitch? What will
yeah,
be your risk? What will be the
yeah,
size of the market? So it was like really interesting. That is how your
yeah.
plan should be when you go.
Correct.
For an investor, you want an investor to invest, you need to have these plans chalked out, especially the kind of thing that you have to have a foreseeing for 12 to 18 months.
That's right.
Right. So that was something which was very nice.
Yeah,
Now, I have one question. There are many viewers right now. There might be many who really don't know what is an angel network. So, if you can just briefly tell them what is an angel network, and then we'll get to know as to how can you get your startup in some angel network invest in your startup.
okay,
So,
okay,
this is what we would like to know.
okay. So, if you go back around 20 years in time in India, so first of all, I think I need to explain the concept of angel investor. So, an angel
Right.
investor is the first external investor in your company, in your startup. When you create a startup, the first people who invest in it are normally your friends, your family, your chacha, your mama. So, by the way, one very strong piece of advice for everybody who's listening: always
Okay.
maintain good relations with your chacha and mama. पता नहीं कब उनसे पैसा चाहिए होगा, right? Please, Kriti,
Right.
I hope you maintain good relations. हैं? Maintain किया
Yeah,
ना Kriti?
I
Okay, good,
maintain good
good. Okay.
relations. But
So always do that.
fortunately, I don't need one.
अच्छा, okay. पता नहीं, you never know when. Anyway, so that's normally the first people, and they know you, so they say ठीक है बेटा, मुझे पता है तू नालायक है, but फिर भी 2 लाख ले ले. Okay, but the the first external guys who don't know you and who are willing to put money are what we call angel investors. Okay, and the reason
Right.
why they are called angel investors is that it's a very early stage company, very high risk.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Most people are not willing to help you with money. When nobody wants to help
Uh-huh.
you, who helps you? The angel, right? So, which is why they are called angel
Right.
investors. Now, if I take you back about 20 years in time, you
Mm-hmm.
only had at that time very rich angel investors, and there were a few of them in India. So maybe you had 100,
Right.
200, right? People like, I'll tell you, Ratan Tata, right? Narayan Murthy,
Uh-huh.
Nandan Nilekani, Azim Premji, okay, Anand Mahindra,
Right.
Kriti Khandelwal,
Bilkul.
these really super rich people. Okay, you can see one of the angel investors
Yeah.
next to me here,
Thank you so much for it.
the
I
real
think
rich
it's
one.
like future calling.
I'm talking about 20 years ago. So, so you had real rich people. Now, there are two advantages of these rich people. Number one, normally when a startup goes in for funding, you will need maybe 1 crore, maybe 2 crores, right? That's the kind of money you raise initially. These rich guys, there was no problem putting in 1 crore on their own. रतन
Right.
टाटा को बोलो बॉस 5 करोड़ डाल देगी, नो प्रॉब्लम, डाल देगा. मुकेश अंबानी को बोलो डाल देगा, नो प्रॉब्लम, राइट? So each angel investor, the rich ones, used to put in money and they did not need the support of other angel investors because they had enough money to put the entire amount into any startup. Okay. Number
Exactly.
two, these people, they had, because they were rich guys, they had their own teams which would
Mm-hmm.
analyze and evaluate the startup for possible investment. So, the business analysis, the auditing, the financial due diligence, the legal shareholder agreement banana, all that. Right? So they had their own teams. अब हुआ क्या है? If you look at the last 7-8 years, suddenly in India, startup has become a buzzword. Okay, and so has
Right.
unicorn. Today, in this,
Mm-hmm.
right now we are in 2020. Sorry, we are in 2021, and
Right.
there are about 50 plus unicorns in India, which means
Right.
valuation of more than $1 billion. And everybody says, बॉस मेरे को भी एंजल इन्वेस्टर बनना है, मेरे को भी पैसा ऐसे
I know.
बनाना है, बायजूस में डालना है, ओयो रूम में डालना है, राइट? सो
They even
नाउ
have unicorn cartoons now.
ah, yes, absolutely. So, that is the
Even a
point.
3-year child knows what is a
He
unicorn
knows,
nowadays.
my granddaughter is 1 year old. I'm sure she will know what it is. So, 20 years ago, there were only these few rich angels, but today there are about 25,000 common man angel investors. They are not rich, they're guys like me, right? They can't put in
Right.
1 crore, but they can put in 5 lakhs. Okay?
Huh.
I have a term for this. I call it the
Right.
Aam Aadmi angel investor.
हाँ, I
I
read it
want
in the book. It was आम आदमी एंजल इन्वेस्टर कैसे बनेगा?
Ha. And please understand one thing, all viewers, this has nothing to do with Mr. Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party. Nothing to do with it. Oh, it's a
Nothing to do
different
with
issue altogether.
arm also.
Nothing to do with Aam, correct. So, now the problem is the Aam Aadmi angel is a common man, right? So,
Right.
one person investing in one startup is not enough. You need about 20, 25, 30 of them who invest together, correct?
Right.
Because earlier you had a rich guy, he said, ठीक है मैं पूरा पैसा डाल दूंगा. Now you can't,
हाँ.
right? So that's number one. Number two, the Aam Aadmi angel does not have the support of his own team, which is the
Right.
business analyst, the accountant, the lawyer, etc., etc. That is where
हाँ.
the angel network comes in. So the an angel network is like a club.
Right.
It's like a club with
हाँ.
members, and each member is an angel investor. So what the club does is the angel network. It says all startups who want funding come to me. We
Right.
will evaluate you, we will figure out whether it is worthwhile funding you or not, and then we will put our members in touch with you and offer your company for possible funding to our members. And then the members decide when isme dalna hai, nahi dalna, etc. etc. And then the
Right.
angel network supports this entire transaction in doing the analysis, doing the financial due diligence, checking on the records, drafting the shareholder agreement, etc. etc. So it does two functions. In fact, three. A, it brings in startups for funding. B, it provides all the support that is required to members, and it brings members together so that together they can invest in one startup. That is an angel network.
Right.
Okay? And there are some
Right.
6, 7 large angel networks in the country. I am from
Okay.
Lead Angels, LEAD, Lead Angels Network, which is one of the
Okay.
large ones, one of the biggest ones. Then there are
Okay.
some 6, 7 others and lots of small guys. Right? So that's an
Okay.
angel network.
So, how do we come to an angel investor? I mean, how do I get to know about you?
Yeah.
And, it is very difficult if someone wants to fund their startup, they have a plan also, and they have a business plan, they have projections made, they are looking for
Yeah.
some kind of a funding. So, how do they approach you guys?
Yeah. So, first of all, you don't know who angel investors are. Your next door
Right.
neighbor may be a very good, solid angel investor. But A, you don't know
Yes.
him. B, if he's an Aam Aadmi angel, he'll only put in 5 lakhs and you may need 1 crore. Right? So, nobody,
Right.
no startup approaches an individual investor because you
Okay.
don't even know who they are. You will approach an
Right.
angel network, right?
Network.
Correct?
Okay.
And like I said, there are
Right.
6, 7 big ones. And if you
Okay.
were to Google angel networks in India, you will get those 6, 7 names. For
Okay.
example, the oldest in our
Mm-hmm.
country is what I call Indian Angel Network, which is
Okay.
Delhi based, and
Okay.
it's probably the oldest, right? Lead Angels is
Okay.
it's more recent, but it's one of the large ones, right? So you Google and you'll find these 6, 7. You just approach
Okay.
them. Not too many of them,
Okay.
maybe one or two at the most, and
Yeah.
they
So,
will arrange. They will arrange for their members to get a presentation made by you, and then we take it
okay.
forward.
Okay. So there's a website also for lead
Yeah,
angels.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
All
fine.
these
Okay.
angel
So
networks will have their own website. So you just Google.
okay, okay, okay. So that is how you approach an angel
Yeah,
network for
yeah,
your funding and your startup.
correct.
And if someone wants to become a angel investor, what
Okay.
will be the process? Can you tell
Again,
us?
the best option is again join one of these angel networks, right? Because they will
Okay,
take you
how do
through
you
everything.
join them?
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at lead angels, right?
Right.
You Google lead angels, you will get them
Okay.
on the the search list, and then there will be an icon there where it says
Mm-hmm.
join to become a member, or
Oh.
you can catch
Mm-hmm.
me on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn profile I'll share with you, and you approach me,
Mm-hmm.
and I will put you in
Mm-hmm.
touch with the people at Lead Engines, and they
Okay.
will normally invite you from for one seminar where we
Right.
discuss details about angel investing. And if you're interested, most welcome you join. Normally, to
Mm-hmm.
join, we have an
Mm-hmm.
annual membership fee of 10,000. Plus, there is a small
Okay.
amount that is charged for every investment that you make.
Monthly.
No, no,
Okay.
for every.
Investment.
So, if you're not making any investment, you only pay 10,000. But
Okay. Okay.
you pay
Okay.
10,000 for a year to become a member of the club, and
Right.
therefore we keep putting up opportunities to you. And when you want to make an investment, there is a small percentage of that we charge. So that's how you
Right.
become an angel. Just approach an angel network.
And how do you know that you have to invest? You can invest in this company. It's going to go big. I mean, that's. I think the persistent framework
Yeah,
will again come into place for the same
correct,
reason.
correct. So I'll explain the persistent framework. See, persistent is a 10-letter word where each
Mm-hmm.
letter stands for something. So P,
Right.
the first letter in persistent, stands for problem.
Problem.
You have to be solving a problem for somebody. So if the startup is solving a problem, wonderful, it can succeed potentially. If it is not
Mm-hmm.
solving a problem for anybody, the business cannot be viable, right?
Right.
Secondly, there has to be what is called an earnings model,
Earning mode.
right? That
Mm-hmm.
is the E in persistent, which means somewhere you have
Right.
to earn money. The customer has to be willing to
Right.
pay you for solving his problem. If you solve his problem but he's not willing to pay you, again, it's not a successful business, right? So that's the E that
Hmm.
you have to look at. R stands for risks. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and risk is what every business has risks.
Risk.
For example, there
Definitely.
is the risk of the RBI changing rules if you're a fintech company, right? It's a
Uh,
huge risk.
right.
One of the biggest risks you have is the risk of competition, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the so therefore what you need to do is to create an entry barrier, okay? And that's an E
Right.
in the word persistent. Entry barrier is
Mm-hmm.
what? This is my business. This is
Mm-hmm.
my competitor. I have to
Mm-hmm.
create a barrier within my business so my competitor cannot enter and take away my market share and kill me, right? So that's an entry
Okay.
barrier. And one very
Mm-hmm.
good kind of entry barrier is if you have some kind of innovative solution. So that's an I. That's
Right.
the I in persistent, right? For example, if you have a
Okay.
patent, that's a solid
Mm-hmm.
entry barrier because legally nobody
Yeah.
can copy it, right?
You cannot touch you for
Exactly. Then you
next
have
some
the two
years.
S's. So the first
Uh,
S is size of the market. Because if the
mm-hmm.
size of the market is not large, then you
Hmm.
can't grow and then you will stagnate.
Exactly.
It's pointless creating a
Hmm.
startup which can't grow, right? So that's size of the market.
Right.
However, sometimes the market is very large but it is very crowded, which means
Ah.
there are too many competitors there, very difficult to
Uh-huh.
survive there. So in such a case,
Right.
you identify a subset or a niche.
Niche.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's the N in persistent, right? A subset or
Hmm.
niche within that market which is not crowded, right? So that's N.
Right.
And the other issue is scalability, because
Right.
size of the market tells you how big the market is. Scalability tells you
Hmm.
how rapidly you can grow within that. Because if you don't grow
Okay.
fast, your competitor is
Hmm.
going to grow, eat into your
Will
market share,
yes.
kill you, right? So scalability for a
Right.
business is very important. And the last two things
Okay.
are the two T's. Number
Mm-hmm.
one is team,
Team.
which
Hmm.
stands for the founder and of course the other senior guys, mostly the founders. We have a
Mm-hmm.
very, very important saying in our startup world where we say
Mm-hmm.
if you have a great business model but an average team, it will not
Hmm.
succeed. But if you have an average business model and a great team of founders, they'll figure out a
Right.
way to transform that business model to make it successful.
Right.
right?
What I have understood is also the team should have, diversification. If
Yes,
one
yes,
is good in AI,
yeah,
or other is good
yes,
in software, though maybe
correct.
the other is good at finance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one guy, if one guy is good at operation, the other guy should be good at strategy. Third guy could be good
Right.
at IT technology, right? You're right. Ideally,
Right.
you should have co-founders who have diverse capabilities. And the last thing is the last T, which is traction, which is the final proof. Are you getting revenues? Are
Right.
you getting customers? Are the customers growing month on month, year on year, right? Ultimately, that's the
Mm-hmm.
final proof. So if a startup satisfies this persistent criteria, there is no guarantee.
Right.
There is never any
Mm-hmm.
guarantee, but the chances of it succeeding is higher. And therefore, it's a
Right.
potentially good startup to invest. Then, of course, when you're part of an angel network, there are lots of people who have experience in the same industry. They will share their views. So it is not just one person's decision. It is the
Right.
collective wisdom of all the angel investors who are evaluating that startup. And that is why when you go through an angel network, the chances of success are higher than if you are an individual and you invest purely on your own.
Right. Because you have lot of funding, lot of knowledge also they'll provide
Yeah,
you. I mean, this is
correct.
how it should be done.
Exactly.
There would be,
Exactly. So you have
yes,
support from the network and from
yeah,
all the other members. It's
right.
like a class. See, in class, you will learn from the teacher, but you will also learn from all the other toppers in the class.
Students, right? You will
So,
learn from all the other people who's there in the class, and it's
exactly.
always a different learning with every new person. I believe it's a different learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Correct. Valid. Yeah.
Right. So, can you tell us, like, how is angel investors different from VCs? I mean, how venture capitalist, and what I understood is VCs, they towards the end when you want to raise
Yeah.
money or fund for your startup, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So, what is the exact difference
Okay.
between an angel investor and
Okay.
a VC?
So I will take an example, a parallel. When
Uh,
you invest, when you buy shares in the stock market, right? You're investing in the
right.
stock market, you can do two things. Number one, you can say, I know which companies to search for. So I know I want to invest in Reliance Industries or I want to invest in Hindustan Lever or whatever, right? So it is
Right.
my money. I take the decision, I put in and I buy shares directly in whichever company I want. The other
Right.
option is I say, look, I don't understand this and I don't have time. So what I will do is
Right.
I will put my money into a mutual fund. And the
Uh-huh.
manager of the mutual fund will then invest my money. He
Right.
decides
In
which
those
companies.
assets, yes,
Okay,
in
correct. He
those
decides which
companies
companies.
which,
I'm not involved. Right?
right.
Similarly, similarly, in the startup world, if I directly buy shares in a startup that I like, I'm an angel investor. But if I
Right.
say I want to invest in startups, but I don't understand it, I don't have the time, I will give my money to a mutual fund in the startup world. That mutual fund is what we call a venture capitalist or a VC. Okay,
Okay.
so the VC basically collects money from all of us
Money
and says,
from
boss,
others.
absolutely.
Huh.
अब मेरे पास पैसा आ गया. Now on your behalf, I will invest your money. I will decide. You're not involved.
Huh.
So then I don't know.
Huh.
He can invest in Byju's. I don't know. I have no idea.
Huh.
Right? So essentially, the angel investor invests his own money, whereas the VC
We
invests
see
somebody
rest
else's money.
in
Right?
else's money, and
And
they want the return also.
so both want returns. See, you're an investor in both cases. You want returns, right?
Right.
However, because you're investing somebody else's money, you can take less risk. Because if I
Right.
have somebody else's money, I can't. My own money, I can say, ठीक है 5 लाख डूब गया तो डूब गया. You can't say that with somebody else's money.
With somebody else's
Otherwise,
money.
your business is
Huh.
over. Nobody will put money into your fund, right? So they
Right.
need to invest much later when it is less risky, when the business is more proven, which is why VCs normally invest at a later stage. So first stage is
Right.
friends and family. Next stage is angel investors. When the business has some level of stability and it's proven as a business, risk फिर भी होता है. We are not saying there's no
Yeah.
risk, but at
Risk
that
is
stage the VC comes in. He does a much more thorough evaluation, but he puts in much more money. So that's the
right.
difference between the angel and the VC.
Right. So thank you for clarifying the both. And how do
Sure.
you approach this VC? I mean, इनका भी कुछ network या
हाँ
कुछ रहता है
हाँ
क्या?
तो ऐसा है.
Okay.
There is no angel network in the case of VCs because see Angel investors can be 30,000, right?
but
But
VC to
VCs
ek,
are maybe 50. Maybe there are
in
50, maybe 100.
and individually only. Yeah.
No, so each VC is like a company. It's a
Okay.
company which is managing other people's
Okay.
money in a fund, right? That's like a
Mm-hmm.
mutual fund. It's like
Okay.
ICICI Prudential is a company which manages funds, right?
Okay. Okay.
So to approach a firstly, initially when you want to raise money, you will never approach a VC because the VC will not be
Right.
interested. It's too early. He will not
Right.
take that risk, and he'll normally put in
Huh.
bigger amounts. So
Huh.
normally you will first approach an angel when you have reached a certain minimum size of
Mm-hmm.
revenue,
Mm-hmm.
then you
Mm-hmm.
approach the VC. Now there are two ways you can do it. Way number one is there are again lots of VCs available. You can Google them. For example, in India you have uh, Chirati Ventures, you have Sequoia Capital, you have Tiger Global,
Yeah.
you have SAF Partners. You have lots of these guys, lots and lots of
Hmm.
VCs, right? Or there are organizations which help you connect with VCs, and
Okay.
they are like investment advisors. So they will help
Hmm.
you go up to
Connect to
VCs. They
VCs.
will tell you which VCs are likely to be interested in your kind of company, and they will help
Hmm.
you get funding. So Lead Angels does that also. We also do
Right.
that. So you can either do
Okay.
it on your own or you can go through these advisory
Right.
organizations.
It's almost like having a literary agent for your book.
Exactly, exactly, correct. That's right. You're right. You're
Right.
right.
So that can be done. Okay. So another question that I have is like, these days everyone is like starting up, and everyone is like, I want to start up, I want to get into it and do some work, because one source of income is not enough for me. So what do you suggest these people? I mean, do you think that they go out without a plan, and then they don't work on it, and then fortunately, unfortunately, they fail on that? I mean, how
So
is how to go?
yeah, I have two, three comments. So first of all, you must remember, second, third, fourth source of income
Mm-hmm.
may not work. And simple reason for
Right.
that is, when you create your business, it is
Ah,
more than a full-time occupation. You cannot say,
more
look,
than.
during the day I'll do my job, in the evening I will, watch movies, at night I will work on my startup. वो नहीं चलेगा. It is a full-time activity, right? You can be
Exactly.
woken up at 11 in the night or 4 in the morning or whatever. Why? Because your
Ah,
customer is angry. So
ah,
don't try and be a part-time founder. It doesn't work. It has to be
hmm.
full-time. Yes, if you're not sure about it, you can experiment with it along with your job. But once you're
Right.
sure, you have to, um, you know, sorry, yeah, you have to do it full time. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's one issue. Second issue is if you want to do it, be very clear that this is your baby.
No.
It's not like I said, it's not
Exactly.
something you can do for 2 hours a day. It's your
Hmm.
baby, right?
Hmm.
So you have to be very clear that you have to be passionate about this baby. For
Huh.
example, if you are in the edtech space, you have to be
Uh-huh.
very passionate about children's learning through technology, through the internet. Because if you're not
Hmm.
passionate about it, बनेगा नहीं. I mean, you'll say
होगा ही
ठीक है
नहीं.
नहीं हो रहा है, right? You have to
हाँ.
have a clear what I call a dream, and
Yes.
this is
I
what
was
I want to
reading.
achieve.
Huh.
Yeah.
I
So
was reading the book, and there was an example where someone was very much interested in gaming consoles and used to
yeah,
play a lot.
yes, yes, absolutely,
Right. And then
absolutely.
finally he found what interests him
Yeah.
and how to put that to work.
Correct. I had invested in that company, by the way. No, so you're right. So,
Okay.
you have to be passionate, you have to have a dream, and you have to say, boss, मेरे को ये करना है. After that,
Huh.
the persistent framework is very useful to evaluate your company. Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it is always good to have a mentor, one or two mentors who can help you, right?
Right.
And fortunately, today there are lots of people who are um, they are highly experienced. They have reached maybe my age or they are in their 50s. I'm in my 60s, right?
Hmm.
Many people who are retired, but they have a lot of know-how based on 40 years of work life experience.
Right.
They are very keen to mentor youngsters. So there are lots of mentors available. You just have to
Right.
locate those people. As long as you can
So
locate one or two mentors who are willing to help you,
One of the
Life is one.
mentors sitting right next to you. Catch him on
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah, yeah. Except you have to be just remember one thing. Yeah, sure. I mentor a lot of people, and I'm very happy to mentor them. Once the pandemic goes away, I'm very happy to treat you to coffee and burgers at CCD or Barista and mentor you. But please remember, I have limited time. So I cannot
Right.
mentor everybody who approaches me. It's unfortunate because if I do that, my wife, who's right here, will divorce me. I can't do that.
And I got to know it's her birthday on Sunday. So what is that
Ah,
you're gifting her? Are you gifting her
I'm
some
gifting her.
company?
I'm gifting her time with myself all day.
Oh.
No, no, I have
Oh.
gifted her a trip to Bombay where we are spending time with my granddaughter.
I know. She must be loving it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So, can you tell us one more thing? Like, this is the last question almost that I have is what is this Series A funding, Series B
Yeah,
funding, Series C
yeah.
funding? Yeah.
So when you look at, so first of all, like I said, there is angel funding, right? Which normally
Hmm.
goes up to about 1 crore, 2 crores, sometimes 3 crores, right?
Right.
Now, there is a very interesting phenomenon that happens in India. You may
Mm-hmm.
be raising your money purely in rupees, and
Right.
your business may be purely in India, which in which case you buy in rupees, you sell in rupees. But everybody
Mm-hmm.
likes to talk in dollars. Impressive होता है ना?
Exactly.
Impressive होता है.
हाँ,
So
इम्प्रेसिव होता है जैसे $300 का इन्वेस्टमेंट किया
वही तो ना.
उन्होंने पेटीएम में
Correct.
बर्कशायर हाथवे ने तो वो सबको ध्यान है.
See, वही तो ना. You say I have raised funding of 7.5 crores. कोई सुनेगा
नो
भी नहीं.
वन आंसर.
I have raised
थ्री.
$1 million. अरे यार ये तो मरद है, सच में मरद है.
ओ,
You
बहुत
know,
ज्यादा
so
है.
exactly, this is a hero. So the levels of funding, the amount that you raise, they normally are
हम्म.
defined by Series A, Series B, Series C. So Series A normally is $1 million, $1 to $2 million, which is about 7 to 15 crores of rupees, right? Series B
ओके.
then is about $2 to $5 million. Series C is $5 to $10 million. So it just gives you a
ओके.
rough range as to how much you have raised. So when a person says I've
ओके.
raised Series C, you know it is likely to be somewhere in the range of $5 to $10 million. However,
हाँ.
I want to clarify these are only vague figures, very approximate ballpark figures,
हाँ.
right? I mean,
राइट.
somebody raises $20 million and calls it Series C, you can't put him in jail. He calls it
राइट.
Series C, but generally
हाँ. या.
naming that is used.
Right. And it's how this is all about, either they take it from VCs, when how do they raise these Series A funding through VCs or angel
Almost
investors, right?
no, no, no. So normally angel
No.
investors do not go up to Series A normally. They go up
Okay.
to what I call angel funding rounds, which is up to about half a
Mm.
million dollars, maybe a little more, maybe just about
Okay.
1 million. But angels
Mm-hmm.
normally do not have enough money to put in $1 million, which is 7 crores, right? So Series A, Series B, Series C is invariably VCs, invariably,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
unless you happen to be a close friend of Ratan Tata and you are able to
Uh,
convince him, and he says, "Okay, I'll
it,
put in $2 million." वो तो यार, I mean, how many people know Ratan Tata?
that is
I
that
don't.
is the
I don't.
question. Right. So, it was such an interesting conversation with you, and we learned a lot. In fact, I'm not there much into it, but I'm planning to do one, and we've got a lot of insights, especially if you are, a professional who's working in service or think you might have not known because getting into business side of it. These are the current rules or current norms that you need to know about it, and more particularly I believe that in a society what's happening on the economy side, what's happening on the political side, every little bit of everything is what makes you a person, and you can think accordingly then, and your perspective might really change about life.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
this is all about Conscious Core podcast, where we try to give you different perspective of different genres every time that we get into, and today's session was definitely enlightening in terms of funding your startups. And do check out this book, which is Funding Your Startup, and it's interesting. It will give you a great guide.
Yeah. So I'll just add something. Anybody
Yeah.
who picks up a copy of this book, I'm very happy to sign it when we meet and also treat you to coffee at barista.
Oh,
And the
that's
last thing I
great.
want to say, oh, I am very happy.
Yes.
Only thing is, COVID times I can't meet physically. But last thing, whatever you do, whether you create a startup, whether you become an angel investor, whether you take up a job, just take up something that you enjoy doing. Because
Right.
I mean, that's life, isn't it? Don't take up
Right.
something which you're doing just to earn money. Enjoy what you're
Right.
doing.
Right. And I think that enjoyment is one thing that, that you don't feel like work even if you're working on it at
Yeah,
11 p.m. in the
correct,
night. Or maybe you're getting up at 3 a.m. in the
correct.
night, in the morning, and you're like, okay, okay, I'm enjoying it. So it's, that's part of my work. I'm enjoying it. I especially don't like that word burnout also.
Absolutely terrible.
Terrible word. I mean, why these people use burnout? They should look up to the dictionary once. What does it
Uh,
really means?
if
So
you're
this
burning
is
out, that means you're probably doing the wrong thing.
right. You're at the wrong place,
Yeah,
and the timing is also wrong, probably then. So
correct.
that was great conversing with Dhruv ji. Go check out his book. And yes, as he promised, he's going to give you he'll sign your book. Whosoever purchases the book, treat you with coffee and maybe some interesting insights on funding your startup. So that was great with us. Thank you, all of you. Get hooked on to the Conscious Core podcast. You can subscribe and press the bell icon for any recent releases which are coming. And all the best. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.